Hello, in the introduction there you heard a little doodle in DADGAD. Has that kind of Celtic-y DADGAD feel. At the Acoustic Soundboard Convention in 2015, I ran a little workshop on alternate tunings. And I thought 5 or 6 people would turn up. In fact, about 35 people did. We didn't get much further than DADGAD, and we didn't get into as much depth as I would have liked. So I've just come back from the 2016 event where I was reminded that I said I would produce a YouTube video that would run over some of the stuff we talked about in the workshop. So anyway, here we are, better late than never. Now, DADGAD is a very useful tuning, a very common tuning for people who play steel string guitar, but it's not always the most easy of tunings to get into. I know I struggled with it a little bit, and know many people who've just given up, and I think there are some reasons for that. So what we're going to do is look at some little pointers and tricks that will help you to unlock the secrets of this tuning when you're noodling on your sofa. I should say that there has never been a better time to learn anything about these tunings, because the quality of the tutorials available on the web, professionally produced, very affordable. We've never quite seen anything like that before. And of course on YouTube there's a lot of free resource as well. But I always think that, you know, the trick to understanding some of these things is when you move beyond just the tab and you begin to understand by doodling on the settee usually just what they mean by the stuff that you've read, or actually how that fingering makes sense. So it's sofa noodling, I think, that unlocks the secret to these things. So what I'm going to try and do is to run through some of the things that make some sense in terms of sofa noodling. So the first thing to just look at, really, I think, is the nature of DADGAD itself. It's a modal tuning. I'm not going to get any more technical than that. Which sounds quite different, very often associated with not only Celtic music but African music as well. Runs to a different scale, really. On the guitar, it has this effect. So if this guitar was tuned to open D, so a major chord, just strumming the open strings would give me a major D chord. If I do that in DADGAD, this is what happens. That doesn't sound wrong, but it doesn't sound quite right either. Take that a bit further. Whenever I look at a new tuning, I will see what a standard chord shape looks like and see where we go from there. So if I do that in DADGAD, and because it's DADGAD, a natural thing to do is to play a D chord. This is what I get. Now again, that doesn't sound wrong, but it's kind of dark, a bit mysterious, and it's difficult to get out of. And I think that gives some people some problems. I saw a friend of mine playing some twiddly bits in DADGAD at the weekend, at the top 3 frets where you normally would in standard or drop D, and I think he was having trouble getting out of that as well. So let's try and understand how we can unpick it a little bit. So the good thing is that if anybody that's played in drop D tuning, and I guess most of you have at some point, will understand the top 4, the bass strings, the top 4 strings here, because they're the same intervals. So if I play a G chord, or an E minor, or an A, or another A, or even a C, you can recognise that. So the bass 4 strings, I think of in DADGAD as being the anchor. The trick is to see where we go after that. The problem is the top 2 strings, which are tuned a whole tone down. And that has quite a big impact in the way we play, and I'll demonstrate that by looking at two familiar chords. This G position, in drop D tuning, I'd often be playing this, and my kind of hand is pointing up the neck there, and I would be playing up and doodling around here. If I do that in DADGAD, I'm locked into that top position again. Really, I need to move down a little bit. So I will finger a G chord like this, with my index finger on the 5th fret and my other fingers facing down. So the direction of travel in DADGAD is down to the dusty end of the neck. I'll show you what I mean. So DADGAD is sending us down that way. Al Petaway, the fine acoustic guitar player associated with Dream Guitars, reckons that that is the first position in DADGAD, and I think that he's right. I mean, that works not only there, but it works here, works off the 5th string. So that first position is a really good thing to play around with because it's orientating you the right way. Let's look at second chord, a D chord at the 5th fret, which is quite a common chord to use in drop D tuning. And you're playing there around the 5th and the 7th frets. Now, because this is tuned a tone down, in DADGAD you're playing around the same things over the 5th to the 9th fret. So the stretches are greater, and the scales are a little bit different for the twiddly bits. So try and understand that scale. So get a feel for the scales and what seems right for you or not. So sometimes you just want that major, other times you want something a bit different. So play around, noodle around on the scale on the top two strings, and then what we're looking to do is to find simple chord shapes on the anchor bass that just makes sense. So now you'll notice that these are easy chord shapes. Quite often I'm not moving beyond one finger or two. So if we take that D that I talked about earlier, simple way to play that is to just keep the top two strings open. Or here's a version down below the 5th. And you can see that they're simple chord shapes. Simplicity is a key to DADGAD. And that's counterintuitive. It's a very complex sounding tune. There are no real difficult bar chords to play. You want to make those open strings ring to capture the flavour of DADGAD. Now, of course, if you watch somebody like a Pierre Ben-Suzanne play around with his guitar, he's doing all kinds of difficult stretches and complicated chord shapes. For the majority of us, we're doing things that are simple. So DADGAD is quite a simple tuning. So let's just recap. We've got the first position that's sending us down the neck there. We're understanding that scale on the top, which is, not the same. If I was playing in a C tuning, or a C with a suspended second, something like that, you would be quite compact, which is one of the nice things about that tuning. DADGAD isn't. It includes these stretches. So it sends you down the neck that way. Another thing to think about with DADGAD is changing the key. Something like 95% of the stuff you'll see on YouTube is played in D, but you can get more variety out of this tuning by changing keys. So here's a little doodle, a little version of a tune that I wrote in G, and it uses that DADGAD feel. Quite moody. There's a C. Apologies for the mistake there. So play around in different tunings. G is the obvious one to play around with. You could play in C also. You'll have fun finding the F, but vary it a little bit. It doesn't all quite sound the same. Another trick with DADGAD is to use the capo, which I shall have to find, which is in the pocket. This not only gives us the ability to change the pitch. Now, a lot of us will use the capo to match standard chord shapes to our vocal range when we're singing. I certainly do that. But in DADGAD, they have another effect. They kind of they compact things a little bit so the stretches aren't so big, and it also seems to tame some of those overtones. So if I play the same Celtic piece that I had an introduction on. It sounds somehow a little bit more compressed, so it gives you a different feel. And of course, using the capo, you can go all the way up to the 5th fret. I don't usually go above the 3rd myself, but then I'm playing in A, the kind of Dylan tuning really. Apologies to Dylan aficionados there, but you get a feel for the sense of that. And of course, if you're playing in G, you've got a similar different effect. So just by playing in D and G and using the capo, we can cover more or less the whole of the scale there. So I'm going to stop there, because I think that's more than enough for you to play around with on your sofa. So just to recap, we're familiar with the bass, so we're confident there, but we're moving down the neck often. We're using that first position. We're looking for simple chord shapes. And we're understanding what that scale is doing. And maybe changing things a little bit with the capo as well and playing in G. So those are just some simple tips. I think if you just play around with those, you'll start to unlock some of the secrets of this tuning yourself. And you'll probably be in a better place, a more confident place then to go and explore some of the more complicated tutorials or resources that are on the web. So there you go, some tips for getting going with DADGAD while you're sitting on the sofa.